They came quietly, no grand fanfare, no public declarations, just a string of private meetings, a steady diplomatic pulse that began to show through the bruised politics of Beirut. In the space between ceasefires and shuttle diplomacy, Riyadh has begun to whisper its terms, and Lebanon, fragmented and fragile, is listening. At the center of the movement is Prince Yazid bin Farhan, Saudi Arabia's special envoy for the Lebanese file, who has spent recent weeks in and out of Babda Palace, the Prime Minister's offices, and the Speaker's inner circle. He has met President Joseph Aoun, Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, and Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, the three pillars of Lebanon's formal leadership, and his message, deliberate and calibrated, is starting to reshape the conversation about whether and how Arab states will normalize ties with Israel. The subtext is simple. Normalization cannot be a fast, ad hoc process driven by a handful of bilateral deals. It must be anchored in a regional consensus that protects Palestinian rights and ties any breakthroughs to concrete changes on the ground. Israeli withdrawal where occupation persists, credible reconstruction plans for devastated communities, and crucially, the disarming of non-state militias so that weapons are the exclusive domain of the Lebanese state. This is not the language of refusal. It is a language of conditions and sequencing. The Saudi posture is not a categorical rejection of diplomacy. It is a demand that diplomacy follow a script agreed by the Arab world, not a checklist of quick bilateral swaps. That stance has rippled across Beirut like a subtle tide, steadying but reshaping the terms of any future talks. The most striking line arrived in a White House corridor months earlier when Saudi leadership was asked how they would approach the Abraham framework. In those conversations, the Saudi message was both eager and cautious. Prince Mohammed bin Salman said, "We want to be part of the Abraham Aksa frame of Salbei Ed Ord, but we want also to be sure that we secure a clear path of two-state solution. And today we have a healthy discussion with Mr. President that we're going to work on that to be sure that we can prepare the right situation as soon as possible to have that." Those words, earnest on their face, tell you everything. Riyadh wants in, but only if the terms are right and the region is ready. That insistence on regional readiness puts Saudi Arabia at odds with a different vision, one long championed in Washington by President Donald J. Trump, who has favored a faster transactional model of Arab-Israeli realignment. The Abraham Accords, the deals that brought the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan into formal relations with Israel, were presented by Washington as templates to be scaled. Riyadh, though publicly amenable to participating in those frameworks, has made clear it intends to write its own timeline. In Beirut, this new posture from Riyadh is arriving at an awkward moment. Lebanon's political class is divided. President Joseph Aoun, who was elected in January 2025 after a long vacancy, carries the weight of the presidency with a pledge to reclaim state authority. Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, a career diplomat and jurist who took office in February 2025, presides over a government that is trying to steady an economy and rebuild basic governance. And Nabih Berri, the veteran speaker who has led parliament since the early 1990s, still holds considerable sway. The three men do not speak with a single voice on Israel, and that disunity leaves Lebanon vulnerable to being guided by others' agendas. The Saudis, judging that fragmentation to be dangerous, have stepped in as a stabilizer. But their support comes with red lines. Bin Farhan's meetings have been explicit. The Lebanese state must assert control over weapons and security, pursue reconstruction where Israeli operations have damaged infrastructure, and position any engagement with Israel within the framework of the Arab Peace Initiative, the regional plan that ties normalization to the establishment of a Palestinian normalization to the establishment of a Palestinian state. Riyadh has also signaled that interference with the Lebanese Prime Minister's office would be counted as a line crossed. In short, Lebanon should not be a testing ground for normalization unless it speaks as one and follows agreed Arab conditions. In private, some Lebanese leaders have told visitors they will not be the first in the region to sign a normalization deal unless Saudi Arabia does so first. That view, that Saudi timing must govern Lebanese timing, flips the presumed relationship between Washington's ambitions and Riyadh's calculations. If true, it places Saudi Arabia, not the United States, at the center of any future broad realignment. It also complicates a Washington strategy premised on swift bilateral arrangements producing momentum. In the Oval Office and at the microphone, the American approach has been more forceful than subtle. Presided Trump has used the bully pulpit to press for structural change in Lebanon's legal prohibitions on contact with Israel, arguing that laws criminalizing communications step in the way of diplomacy. I think we have to end that, he said in one public exchange, insisting the law be abolished so Lebanese leaders could engage without fear of criminal penalties. That intervention, directed at the substance of Lebanese law and the symbolism of contact, is unmistakable. Washington wants fewer legal obstacles and faster meetings. Those competing priorities, Riyadh's insistence on regional consensus and Washington's impatience for breakthroughs, are part of a larger geopolitical chessboard, For Saudi Arabia, normalization without clear progress on Palestinian statehood and Israeli withdrawal would be politically risky at home and in the Arab world. For the United States, a cascade of bilateral accords was meant to reorder regional alignments in short order. Lebanon now finds itself between and those two visions. Added to this is the reality on the ground, a tenuous ceasefire, rounds of exchanges along the south, the shadow of Hezbollah, and a population exhausted by decades of political dysfunction and economic collapse. Lebanon's delicate sectarian balance, the unwritten division of power between Christians, Sunnis, and Shias complicates the ability of any leader to move rapidly. For leaders like President Allen and Prime Minister Salem, there is no political space for unilateral choices on existential matters like peace or war. That is why Riyadh's message matters, by telling Lebanon to seek unity before engagement and by reminding Beirut that the Arab Peace Initiative remains the touchstone. Saudi Arabia is attempting to re-anchor a process that had begun to drift. Bin Farhan's diplomacy has not been an ultimatum so much as a repositioning. Normalization remains possible, but only on a timetable and a set of terms that respect Arab consensus and Palestinian claims. There is also a practical element. Saudi investment, trade, and political support are significant levers for Beirut. Re-establishing deep ties between Riyadh and Beirut could bring creditors, capital, and a diplomatic buffer that Lebanon badly needs. That is why the Saudi outreach is not simply about geopolitics. It is also about rescuing a country that, without external support, faces a long slide. But the timing is delicate. Across the region, the mood has shifted since the first Abraham agreements. What once looked like a wave of quick bilateral deals has slowed amid renewed conflict in Gaza, cross-border exchanges with Lebanon, and tensions that touch Iran, Syria, and Yemen. Several Arab states that once warmly embraced normalization now weigh domestic opinion, the timing of Israeli actions, and the unresolved Palestinian question. Riyadh's recalibration reflects that broader reassessment. The kingdom is signaling that it will not be dragged into a symbolic recognition that lack the structural guarantees the Arab world demands. Lebanon, meanwhile, must reconcile internal divisions if it hopes to manage its own fate. The choice is stark. Either speak with a unified voice and negotiate from a position of national cohesion, or allow external actors to shape outcomes in ways that could inflame domestic tensions. For Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, whose government was formed with an eye toward reform and stabilization, the task is to marshal consensus without trading away sovereignty. For Speaker Nabi Berri, there is a tightrope between protecting constituencies and preserving Lebanon's fragile civic order. On the Israeli side, talk of direct or indirect negotiations continues. Washington has facilitated back-channel informal discussions, and there have been periods of fragile progress on ceasefires and hostage issues. But Lebanon's strategic calculus includes a long memory of conflict and a powerful non-state actor that has its own agenda. Any pathway that fails to address the question of Hezbollah's arsenal and the deeper security vacuum it symbolizes is unlikely to produce sustainable normalization. Riyadh's reminders that weapons belong to the state speak directly to that reality. For ordinary Lebanese, the debate over normalization is less about grand strategy and more about everyday survival. People see schools, hospitals, and infrastructure shattered by conflict, power cuts, and an economy that has been hollowed out by years of misrule. The promise of reconstruction, the practical benefit of peace, if it comes, matters more than diplomatic ceremony. That is why Saudi insistence on reconstruction and verified withdrawal isn't simply ideological. It is rooted in tangible expectations of what peace should deliver. As the region reshuffles, two facts stand out. First, Saudi Arabia has reasserted itself as a decisive player in any future Arab normalization. Whether it chooses to open that door will determine the scale and pace of any new realignment. Second, Lebanon's internal coherence. or a lack of it will decide whether Beirut can use Riyadh's new approach to leverage security, investment, and political stability, or whether it will be left to pick up the pieces after others set the terms. You can think of Riyadh's current stance as a patient hand on the clock, slowing some impulses while attempting to steer the hour toward consensus. It is a gamble. Move too slowly and momentum evaporates. Move too quickly and the terms that underpin any lasting agreement can be undermined. For Lebanon and its neighbors, the question is whether a careful regional approach will produce a more durable peace or whether it will only delay an inevitable collision between competing agendas. And so the diplomacy continues. In quiet rooms in Beirut and Washington, in the private corridors of Gulf palaces, negotiators and envoys measure what can be traded, postponed, or hardened into law. There are no guarantees, but there is a new clarity this spring. Saudi Arabia intends to shape the pace and the contours of normalization, and Lebanon must either align itself with that broader rhythm or risk becoming the arena where larger powers resolve the question by other means. If there is a single immediate test of that assertion, it will be whether Lebanon speaks with a united voice about engagement with Israel and whether Riyadh's conditions, Palestinian statehood as a non-negotiable anchor, verified withdrawal, state monopoly on arms, and an agreed reconstruction plan are accepted as prerequisites for any movement forward. For now, the message from Riyadh is clear and understated, but unavoidable. The kingdom wants to be part of the normalization story, but it wants to write the chapter on its own terms and in concert with its Arab partners. Lebanon, bruised and divided, must decide whether it will stand together and take part in that chapter or watch it unfold at a distance while others make the key decisions. In the weeks to come, expect more envoys, more closed doors, and more quiet diplomacy. Expect the public rhetoric to be tempered with private bargaining. And expect the final outcome to hinge less on a single headline visit and more on the slow accumulation of consensus or the lack of it among neighbors who have finally learned to treat normalization as a regional project, not a series of bilateral wagers.